I am tonight's, I'm not sure if I'm quite the MC, but I will be hanging out with you all. I may be also a new face for some of us. I am a recent board member and joinee of For the People, but I have known the organization for quite some time. And it's so good to see some of the faces and folks that I haven't seen in quite some time as well. Hello, hello. And it does sound like folks are still joining. So like I said, we'll be getting started here in a couple of moments, maybe a minute or two. And if you haven't yet, please make yourself at home. Feel free to get some water, some snacks or other things like that. It's so good to have you with us. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. I have to say hello to Annette. Hello, Annette. It's so good to see your face. Sue as well. Hello, Scott as well. Oh my gosh. There's so many familiar faces.
And Shirley Morrison is on the telephone with me here.
Hello, Shirley.
She said hello, Dante.
Hello. All right. I think we're good to go. I think people will probably continue to trickle in, but we do want to be mindful of everybody's time because it is a Sunday in the midst of all of it. So we do want to be respectful of time. With that, and I think actually, Susan, it's okay. I think it's great to see everybody's faces. Let's maybe stop our big share, but nonetheless, I know some folks have been here a little bit, but others have just arrived. I want to give a big welcome to everyone who is here, who's made time out of our busy times and the wild times that we're in right now to gather and connect and say hello and share some stories and experiences with those who are part of the For the People community. Couldn't be more excited to be having a little bit of time to be here with you all. Today, we're going to have the chance. This is our annual fundraiser. Like many organizations, we were trying to figure out what the heck that would look like. And for us, our intention was that there's just so much going on that we wanted to create space for us to connect and come together and have conversations. And so tonight we will actually be having that opportunity to get into groups, to meet and share stories with some people that maybe you haven't met before, or maybe that you've organized with in the past. And between those conversations, we'll also get to hear from our organizers, from the people who are part of this model that is trying to reimagine what organizing looks like and see it as a grassroots community-driven process where people who are doing the work have a more intimate and direct connection to those who want to support and be part of their community. So today, that's what we're going to be getting into. We also have somebody who's going to be making it our big ask for us. Really excited for them. But I won't say anything further. We'll let them get introduced later on. But nonetheless, that's what we're getting into. And as we do, I also want to take a moment just to invite folks to acknowledge where we are, acknowledge that we're in this historical moment, that looking about the world, there's a lot going on, but also wanting to acknowledge the land that we're on. For me, I am actually calling in from occupied Ohlone territory, the Bay Area. I know for many of us, you may be calling in from Duwamish occupied territory or the greater Seattle area. And because there are so many of us and we only have so much time, I would like to invite folks who are able to use the chat. And if you want to just briefly say hello to some friends, say hello to yourself, just introduce yourself and maybe even acknowledge the land that you're on as well. So please feel free to flood the chat and put things in there. A small little logistics piece. We have a couple of folks who are kind of making magic happen as we're hanging out. We have Susan, who will be helping share slides, will be getting us into breakout rooms. So yes, big ups for Susan, who's also done so much more than that as well. But Susan will be holding down that piece. We have John, who I'm not sure if I see John's video or face yet, but John is the person who's just playing slides for us and will also be playing a tech support role, as well as Jake, who is in red and possibly waving. Please feel free to reach out to Jake. And I wonder actually, Jake, if you could change your name just to have tech support next to it. That way, if anyone has anything, if you can't hear somebody or other things like that, please feel free to message with Jake. Otherwise, like I mentioned, we're going to be here for an hour and a half. So if you're on Pacific time, that's till 5:30. We're going to really be mindful of everybody's time. And I'm trying to think if there's any other logistics in this kind of opening. Want to make space for if anyone else from the FTP board or team wants to say anything. Otherwise, I am happy to pass it off to our first little activity. I'm so excited to get the boat in the water with you all. Okay, I see some thumbs up and some head nods. All right. Well, like I said, I'm so appreciative to be spending time with you all. I know that we're not here, but I like to imagine that, you know, just for a moment that all of us are in the same room and what that would be like. So just taking a moment to savor what that would be, and looking forward to that opportunity as well. So thank you. And to ease us in, I want to actually hand the mic over to Ellen Finkelstein, who has been actually a mentor of mine for quite some time. If you really knew me, I was but a high schooler, I believe, who had seen a poster on a pole of some sorts, and nonetheless had found myself in Ellen's peace activist training, a summer camp. And thereafter, I actually found myself again with Ellen as somebody who was actually leading that camp. And it wasn't until, and then we didn't talk for almost 4 or 5 years or something like that. And it wasn't until Shell No, where Ellen and others, the Raging Grannies and others came out, and really was able to rebuild the relationship. And I'm so happy to be spending time here with you, Ellen. And I know you've done so much in regards to direct action, to organizing in different spaces, but also for the people and helping lift this organization up. Welcome. I'll pass the floor to you.
Thanks, Dante. Welcome, everybody. It's great to see familiar faces and other folks. Just want to shout back at Dante that in many ways, a number of years ago, he dragged me back in by asking that I work on a project with him, which is actually how I got to know Zarna better and a number of other folks who are on this call. So there's a lot of mutual mentorship that goes on in these communities, and I would say FTP is one of those. I am, at the moment, the longest serving board member who's not an organizer on FTP for the people. I want to shout out, though, to Annette Klepstein and Sue Kay, who were also on the board for 2 years and are instrumental in getting this organization up and running. And the 2 new board members who are filling their spaces in their own unique ways are Dante, who you just heard from, and Susan, who you will hear from later. And one of the things about this time, and as Dante said, we're adapting as we go, is FTP has been adapting and learning as we go. But I want to remind people, or tell people if you don't already know, a little bit about FTP, just to ground us again before we move into sharing. So 3.5 years ago or so, the organizers for the people who were not for the people yet had an experience with them and some other organizers, specifically organizers of color, where they didn't feel like, and they weren't being heard. They weren't being respected by the organization they were working with, and came together to think about what a true collective that centered people of color, that listened and trusted and respected the work and didn't try to control it would look like. And out of that conversation was the beginning of For the People. A number of us came on as the board, and really the organization has been for the last 3 years about making sure that organizers, Zarna, Derek, and Antonio, who are doing amazing work around justice, social justice in their own way, and you're going to hear from them a little bit, are supported. And supported not just by the board, but by all of us. That our understanding is that the changes that we need in our society require people with expertise and experience and dedication and integrity to step up and do the organizing, but they also need to live. They also need to pay bills. They also need to deal with all the things that we all deal with. And in a truly supportive community, which is what For the People has become, that support is centered in a stable and a safe platform that we've created so people can donate through 501c3 status to support them. And our goal continues to be that they will not just survive, but that they will thrive in doing that. And that means that not just barely making ends meet, but also feeling the support and love of all of us. Part of the way that FTP has designed itself is to be accountable to each other. We take accountability really seriously. And I would encourage those of you who haven't looked at that document that's on our website to take a look at it, because what it means is that we, the organizers themselves, are accountable to each other. They're accountable to the board, and the board is accountable to them. They are accountable to the communities they are working in and to the larger For the People community in ways that, again, are about centering those who are impacted, listening and trusting our organizers to know what is right in consultation with those communities, not trying to second guess people, but listening. And if there are issues that come up, reflecting back, taking the time, learning more, leaning in as we need to. The final thing I want to say is that a critical part has been learning how to take care of selves. So self-care is built into our agreement with our organizers, which means even though they're trying to go 24/7, that they take breaks, that they replenish themselves and try to be an example to the rest of us to do the same. So part of this evening is in fact about self-care, but it's about community care and what that looks like, particularly now in the midst of the pandemics that we're dealing with. And it's also about looking forward to the projects that our organizers are working on and are going to continue to work on, and other ways that we are trying to stretch and learn. I think Derek's going to talk a little bit about a new project that we're working on for the people in collaboration that deals with student debt of people. So I am going to pass this back, but again, I want to welcome you all, encourage you all to lean in as that supportive community so that we can build and grow and support the organizers we have and all of each other. And I'm going to pass it back to Dante.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Ellen. And I just want to make my second acknowledgement just around the importance of this work. I'm not sure how many folks felt the, as things changed, how some of our bigger organizations already have momentum and direction where they're going. And part of the uniqueness of For the People is being able to be responsive, to also be adaptive, and to be flexible. And so I just see that as part of the resiliency of this organization and the resiliency that we need in this time. With that, we know when we thought about the time that we had, we thought it would be best spent actually in conversation and in connection with each other. And so Susan, I wonder actually if you could share our next slide. Brilliant. So tonight, as I mentioned at the beginning of this time together, we're actually going to have moments to have conversations. And so we'll have 3 points, and in them, want to invite people, because we are going to be having conversations, multiple conversations with each other tonight, that want to invite folks when you get into your group to find a note taker. And you may not need a facilitator, but at least somebody who's helping kind of push the conversation along, or at least ensure that we're kind of asking some of the questions that are prompts that we're provided through this evening. So we're going to be getting into small groups and having conversations, again, with people that we haven't had maybe much connection with, but nonetheless have so many common experiences. And what we'll do in each of our sessions is we'll get to explore one of the themes that one of the For the People organizers is committed to. It won't necessarily be your work, it may be something that's quite similar or adjacent, but it's an invitation for all of us to kind of think through the lens of the work that we need right now in addressing the multiple crises, the multiple pandemics that we're experiencing right now. And with that, we're going to be first talking and exploring work around Antonio's work, and then Zarna's work, and then lastly, Derek's. So with that, Susan, could we go to the next slide? All right, so we're gonna be breaking up into groups. Like I said, would love to invite folks to say hello, to introduce yourselves, to find a note taker, to take notes along the way if you would like, and invite somebody to at least help the conversation going. This first community connection point will be around food sovereignty and maybe even growing your own food. And so for those of us, how do you get it going? How do you protect it from these external forces? And how do we actually share with each other and distribute these resources that we have? I want to invite us into this kind of space just to have an open dialogue and communication about what some of this stuff looks like. And please take notes along the way. Susan, if it's okay, I think we're gonna break folks out into groups, and then we'll have, I believe, 5 to 8 minutes in each group to connect.
Dante, before we move, there was a question about what some of those terms meant. I wonder if you want to
Oh,
address
perfect.
progressive stack and land the plane.
Oh, great. That would probably help. Thank you. Yes, progressive stack is an invitation to allow those who maybe don't have as much representation or who don't speak very often to speak. And so especially as we're just starting out, if you find yourself talking a lot, it might be an invitation to allow others to speak as well. And especially if there's lots of voices, a facilitator, maybe someone who's facilitating, can keep track of, okay, Ellen had her hand up first, and then it was Susan and the such. The landing the plane is an invitation for us to actually bring things to a closing. So sometimes these conversations can be really juicy and generative, but we might get far from that original question. And so the invitation is to bring the conversation back, and as they say, land the plane. Yes, and we've got the hand motion, landing the plane. And we'll let you all know as we're in our conversations how much time you have left to support that as well. And there was a third one. Yes, I'm pulling it up myself. The last one was a very clear one. Focus on your question. I know that we have only so much time together, so our invitation is to really dig into what's in front of us. Woohoo! Welcome back, everybody. I don't know, I wish we had time to really hear and cross-pollinate. I know that my conversation, the conversation I was in, was quite a good one and only getting better near the end. Oh, awesome. Yeah, please feel free to send a little appreciations into definitely what it's used for. If possible, Susan would love to, I'm gonna begin bringing us into our first speaker. Would also love for a poll to be placed into the chat. Aha. So just want to invite folks, these are just some questions to respond to, just to kind of see how we are group dynamics. Take a moment if you can. Aha, we see some participants to fill it out. As you're doing so, I wonder, Susan, while people are filling this poll out, if you could actually pull up our slide for Antonio. I'm so excited. Our very first speaker is Antonio Zamora, and he is a well-respected Chicano activist organizer who was born in and resides in Portland, Oregon, where he has been integrally involved in a number of struggles, from the Occupy movement to climate and food justice and fossil fuel resistance. He currently works with MERP, the Municipal Eco-Resiliency Project, and will be spending the next little bit giving us a glimpse and insight into what that work looks like. Thank you so much, Antonio, for being with us. And I pass the floor to you.
MERP. Hey, everyone. What can I say about MERP? I actually wrote a blurb to help. We haven't really it's really a community project, and there's like a lot of moving parts to organize a revolutionary urban farm movement for organizations doing the work for the people in the city. So essentially, we're like, how I say, we're a mass organization. The mission is to build a local food network and production and distribution using permaculture practices, ancient indigenous knowledge, in order to address inequalities, to access food, help people become their own change makers in this way, sustenance, build a material base upon which we can exercise autonomy. We aim to build community power for food sovereignty before the year 2030, to sustain ourselves in the face of capitalism, late stage capitalism, and climate change. That's what's happening right now. So, merp merp.
Brilliant. Thank you for that little update and insight into the organizing work that you're doing right now. Susan, was there anything else that you wanted to add, or are we able to move to our next section? Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Antonio, for opening up and giving us just a brief little glimpse into the work that you're doing right now. It sounds like some work that we should also be thinking about as well in regards to the Seattle area. And I'm so curious to learn about what might be happening locally as well here in the Bay Area.
If I may give some references,
Please, yes.
Check out the Zapatistas, check out Cuba, check out Soul Fire Farm. Soul Fire Farm is really amazing. Free the land, free the people. I really hope that we can take the opportunity we have within this decade to unite with our siblings, brothers and sisters of the global South, because that's how we're going to get a just transition forward. Remembering that this is a work for colonized people and for the future of everyone. So yeah, merp merp.
Thank you. All right. That leads us into our very next community conversation, where we'll have the chance to jump back in to our groups. This next one connects to the work of Zarna and how we think about our organizing and our work in relationship to our bodies. So here are the questions. What should you have in your bag for a fire, for COVID, for a protest, for at least a week of survival? How do you document your experience for yourself and the benefit of others in these situations? And how do you protect your home and still open it for communities during times of fire, protests, and white supremacists emergencies? And what does preparing yourself for guests so that you don't get COVID actually look like? So there's a lot there. It has a lot to do with our own personal selves. And would love to invite Susan for you to invite us back into our group so we can continue these conversations. Whew. Welcome back, folks. Each time these conversations continue to deepen. For me, this last one, I very candidly have not done a lot of preparation work for different disasters, and hearing from some of the colleagues or people that were in the group was important. And as well as we're entering this third wave of the pandemic with 69 new cases identified on Friday, some of these conversations are important. And even for us, we need to continue to communicate in the middle of some of these pandemics. With that, want to invite Jake to go ahead and thank you for putting a poll up there. Please feel free to take a moment to check in, to respond to these. It's kind of meta questions to our dynamics in our groups. The poll is kind of a reflection of some of the dynamics that we might even see in our communities outside of this space. But what that does is, as you're responding, I want to actually invite us and invite to the floor Zarna Joshi, a well-known community organizer based in the Pacific Northwest region. She is of Indian Hindu descent, and has been a climate and social justice activist since she was a teenager, witnessing and feeling deeply environmental and social justice problems around the world. Today, Zarna is going to take a moment to actually unpack, share what some of that work looks like, and open it up for us to continue the conversations that we were just having in some of our small groups. Give a big welcome, if you'd like, in the chat or other things like that, to Zarna.
Thank you so much, Dante. Shri Krishna Sharanam. Shri Krishna Sharanam. Shri Krishna Sharanam. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm speaking to you all on Duwamish territory, Coast Salish territory here in Seattle. And I wanted to give you an update. So there's been a lot going on, as you can imagine, as has been going on for everyone. And one of the things that particularly came up for me in this last year with these pandemics is I decided to focus on helping people who were sick, who because of their identities, were not sure that they were going to survive it, even if they went to a hospital, right? Like if you are indigenous, if you are trans, if you are disabled, you know, if you are, you know, Black, if you are so many different marginalized identities, even if you go to a hospital, there's you know, there is no guarantee that you're going to be helped, even if you have healthcare. And that came up multiple times with multiple different people in our community. And so I, in so many ways, you know, dedicated myself to trying to, you know, help them, because they didn't want to go to a hospital because they didn't think that they would come out alive. That was how serious the situation was. And, you know, this pandemic has created these types of stresses and these types of disasters. And so, you know, in supporting, you know, those people, I was trying to help them with what natural medicine I knew from years of reading, and also from my own people, you know, thousands of years of our history. And those were things that I tried to help people with. And this is where documenting things came into play, because of security culture, I couldn't just say, oh, you know, I'm helping this person or I'm helping this person, because, you know, we didn't want a situation of them disappearing. And yet again, like the triple pandemics of racism, of cops, of climate change, of COVID, of all of these different scenarios, and the fact that we've got people who are sick, who desperately need help, but don't feel confident about going to find help in these traditional places. And what do we do in those situations? That's why some of those questions that we just talked about are so important. So one of the things, you know, that we did was, okay, how do we create a space in this house where this person can just, you know, be sick, but also get food, get water, get everything that they need, get natural medicines, and be able to document what is happening to them so that we can share it with other people who are in similar circumstances, so that they, you know, have what they need to also help them. That was one of the things that I've been working on this year. Another thing I've been working on is supporting my own community around Hindu phobia. There's been a lot of Hindu-phobic trauma this year. I mean, there's always a lot of Hindu-phobic trauma, but this year in particular, it was extremely in our face. And there were a lot of Hindu youth. There were a lot of Hindu women in particular who were feeling the violence. And there were a lot of people who are Hindu who have assimilated into Hindu phobia, who were trying to decolonize themselves. And so, you know, I was doing a lot of supporting people around that, mentoring, counseling, putting out resources, educating people. I had one particular instance where a Hindu man who had been so assimilated into Hindu phobia that he didn't want to identify as Hindu at all. He came to me and he said that these podcasts that you've been putting out helped me so much that I was able to, for the first time in my life, actually talk to my own father about who we are, and ask him questions that I never asked him before, because I didn't know which questions to ask, and I also didn't want to ask because I didn't want to know the answers. And that led to this whole conversation within the entire family about how to decolonize themselves. So that's one particular, you know, thing that I've also been working on. I've also been working on putting out educational resources around child abuse. And this is a particular thing within our social justice movements that we don't really identify as a system of oppression, even though it clearly is. So that's one of the things that I've been doing. And there are so many challenges around that, because, you know, the far right have like taken this issue and made it their own. And the problem with that is that they've been able to do that because we haven't been in that conversation. So for us to be there and challenge that, as well as center survivors, is something that I've been working on, among so many other things. And I'm out of time, I think, so I'm going to hand it back to Dante, but thank you all so much. There's so much work that is going on, and I thank you all.
Thank you, Zarna, for sharing. Yes, what it reminds me of is that really this is a community, and want to encourage folks, if you do feel comfortable, or if you want to follow up, to reach out to Zarna, to reach out to Antonia, to reach out to Derek, and continue to connect and have conversations with folks. Please be in conversation, and feel free to reach out. To lead us into our final speaker for the night, we have one last community connection moment, and want to encourage folks as we lean into this one to make sure to say bye to your folks that you've been spending some time with this evening at the end, because this will, I believe, be one of the last times that we're in our breakout groups. So this final section is about the work that Derek has been a part of. It's about tending to our bodies, our home, our neighborhoods, and our communities. It's about ableism and access. And the questions are, how do you prepare or weatherize your house and make it ready for it being a long-term sanctuary? How do you learn and share survival skills for protesting, protecting your home and body, and creating long-term food supplies? And lastly, what supplies do you need to keep ready? And how do we ensure community continuity of supply chains through just transition? So there's quite a bit here to chew on, but again, it's an invitation simply to allow ourselves to discover who else is in our groups with us, what do we know collectively, and to open ourselves up to the final conversation with Derek. So Susan, if you can, please get us into our groups, and I'll see you all on the other side. Welcome back, everybody. If you are like our group and just kept talking all the way up to the very last minute, feel free to put in the chat just a little appreciation or thank you to the other folks that you were able to connect with. Again, this is a community, and want to invite people to take the time to continue to connect with each other and follow up and keep the conversations going. One of the things that came out of this last session for us was just the importance of communicating, of being in relationship with others, and that in the face of all that's going on, it's our relationships that can help us navigate these pieces, as well as that when we do work and address some of these things, there's sometimes positive spillover effects. The things that you do around one may actually support the other as well in addressing what's going on right now. And with that, I want to transition us to our very last speaker, Eric Hoshiko, a Japanese American, is a climate and social justice organizer based in rural Island County, Washington, with a background in community-based economic development, local living economies, sustainable local food systems, and the tech sector. Derek will be taking some time right now to give us a big old update and insight into what is going on in his life and organizing. Welcome, Derek.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Dante. And thank you so much, each and every one of you, for being in the space with us today. It's so great to see so many of you that I've been organizing with in various different projects over the last few months, over the last few years. And so my heart is just completely amazed and expanded here, being here. And it's it's part of my healing to be here with you all. So just quickly want to talk about responsibility and how there's the word responsibility, and then there's the word, when you break it down, response ability, our ability to respond, and how do we respond to these triple pandemics, and how am I taking responsibility for them, and what is my responsibility is really the question. And so the things that are kind of coming up are just, for me, and how I show up is visioning. Like, I have this like holographic representation of the world in my brain, and I just check where are there things that need to be attended to in the community. So I just want to give us 15 seconds, 20 seconds to pause and just ground ourselves in that question of how do we take responsibility? How am I taking responsibility? And part of it for me has to do with the how we make decisions. Where is privilege and power showing up in our lives? In how have we internalized capitalism, patriarchy, and white supremacy culture? And so when we make decisions, are we making those decisions based on money and power, which are the values of capitalism and the systems of oppression? Or are we making decisions based on the values of the just transition and the just transition framework? And so, for example, to the questions that were coming up earlier, when we make decisions about how we improve our home, we're making those decisions continuously with that lens of how do we make ourselves more resilient to these pandemics. And one quick example of that is that we really took it upon ourselves to invest in heat pumps, ductless heat pumps. That sounds really technical and like clean energy, whatever. But it has allowed us to not have to use propane or fracked gas in our homes, which has recently been linked to increased health impacts due to the burning of fossil fuels in our own homes. We're able to heat our homes with a third to half the energy of otherwise. So we're not using coal or gas for electricity either as much. But when the smoke from the wildfires came around, these heat pumps have HEPA filters on them, which were allowed us to breathe easier when the smoke was all around us. And so and as global warming exacerbates, these heat pumps also can be used for cooling. And so it's kind of like a really concrete example of how solutions to the pandemic, solutions to the climate crisis, solutions to racism, all actually work together when we use the values basis. They work together to solve our problems. So just one thing, since the pandemic, I've really pivoted to exploring how do we use this moment to create a new normal? How do we say we're done with business as usual and these systems of oppression, but we're going to transition to now. What does that look like? So I've had a lot of conversations with some of you, with some other folks that aren't on the call. And one of the things that we did, which I'd like to announce, use this moment opportunity to announce, that Sailor Sea Cooperative Finance, which is an organization, cooperative working on the student debt crisis, is partnering with For the People, and we're launching Community Care Debt Relief, which is a program to provide direct support to community organizers of color to reduce their student debt burden. And that this program has taken months and months and hundreds of hours of both For the People board and SS COFI board to put this program together, which will be announced in the next couple of weeks through For the People, and will be happening the week of November 16th. So you'll get the chance to check that out. But what it is it's rooted in community values of care and trust, and how do we support people, and what is our own creative response to these different pandemics. So I just wanted to share a few words about that. I could go on for an hour, but I'll leave it there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Derek, for that. And I know you're going to be introducing the very next person, but I did want to just give a moment for people to appreciate Derek. If you want to put it into the chat or other things like that. I believe there is a third round of polls that might be out, or maybe we made it through all of them. But nonetheless, I'm actually passing it back to you, Derek, so you can actually introduce our big speaker, or
Sounds
our big
great.
ask.
Thank you so much. I didn't need to take a breath, so thank you for picking it back up and then tossing the ball back. Got to keep those balls going. So it's my honor and privilege, and it is my excitement to introduce Maggie Natras, who is a 16-year-old student at South Whidbey High School and an activist who helped co-found United Student Leaders, which is a group of youth from Whidbey Island advocating for climate justice. She has been organizing protests and campaigns for over a year, but has always been passionate about social and climate justice, and will continue to work within the activism community to make lasting change. Maggie is someone that I have been able to get to know over the past year, and I've been allowed to mentor Maggie and the other youth that are part of United Student Leaders, and it is an honor and a privilege every single week that we're throwing down together on all these different campaigns, and it's become a significant part of my work with For the People and the Rapid and Just Climate Action to support Maggie and the other youth with United Student Leaders. So without further ado, hand it to you, Maggie.
Awesome, thank you so much, Derek. And I'm glad to be here. So yeah, after that quick bio, most of my first part of what I'm saying is obsolete, but I'm fine with that. Basically, I'm a youth activism, or youth activist rather, and I'm in activism because I'm passionate about the climate crisis, politics, social justice, things I've learned from living on a farm and being raised by liberal parents. And I've been so happy and so excited to be part of this community. And that actually started about a year ago, in September of 2019. So USL, United Student Leaders, has accomplished quite a lot since it got started. We posted webinars, we wrote a very lengthy letter to our school board, basically asking them to educate students more on the just transition and the 3 pandemics that you've heard a lot about today. And it was one of the major campaigns that just happened recently. But the first campaign that I was a part of was protesting JP Morgan Chase and Wells Fargo in the banking on climate activism around there, as well as Fridays for Future. And my best friend and I decided about a year ago that protesting these 2 gigantic banks would be the best possible option for starting to organize for the first times in our lives. So we were surprisingly successful. We got about 150 people to turn out the first protest that we did. And after that kind of kicked off, we were able to continue to protest and get about 10 to 15 people out in front of Chase and Wells for about 1 day every week. So it was about an hour and a half. And yeah, that went on for a while until quarantine struck. But we were only able to do that through Derek's help with For the People. We were able to spread the word, get out to those 150 community members that this was happening, that this was going down. And since then, Derek has stepped into that role of helping us take charge and helping us run USL, run this new organization that is completely student driven, completely student organized, completely student run. And that was only possible because of For the People and because of the fact that he was able to take his time and focus on us and focus on what we can do to continue to move forward without having to worry about friends, family, making sure that he's still in his house and still being supported. So I'm so very thankful for that. Zarna also has been able to mentor us in figuring out ways to smash the patriarchy within and without the activism community and showing us how to stand up and speak for ourselves. So For the People was able to provide a Zoom account for us for our weekly meetings that we're still hosting and have gone on for about 30 weeks. And when USL ran its own fundraiser, For the People was able to give us a fiscal sponsorship to have the technology to raise and gather the money we needed for our webinars and our guest speakers. Yeah, so all of this was allowed and given to us so that we can continue to speak for ourselves and organize around things that we are passionate about. And one of the reasons I'm here tonight is because this is just a small section of what For the People has done. So recognizing minorities and groups of people who are dismissed and overlooked and making sure that they have the support they need and the guidance they need through people like Derek and Zarna and many of the speakers that we've heard today is so incredibly important. I'm an activist. I'm a 16-year-old girl. I don't want adults to speak for me. I want to be using my own words and trying to communicate my own thoughts, not being spoken for. I want people to step back and use their privilege to let me speak for myself and the things I'm passionate about. And this is why For the People is such an important organization for minorities and people of color, because I have the privilege to not be discriminated against for my skin. And I've already seen how difficult it is to be part of the activism community if you don't have the support of organizations like For the People. So that is part of the reason why I'm here. If organizers can't raise money for their families because of COVID, if they can't work behind the scenes for hours and produce amazing webinars to educate themselves and others, if they're focused on getting out of dangerous situations with places that are affected by the climate crisis, then they're not able to call for that change to actually happen. So organizers who are part of these communities will continue to stand tall and continue to speak out about things, and our society will continue to try to ignore them. So we're here today for you to step forward and make it impossible for them to be ignored. We're trying to raise, or rather For the People is trying to raise $10,000 here today. Smaller monthly donations are really appreciated and really important because they can continue to go towards giving money for people at a steady, continued pace. However, large donations are very appreciated as well. Everything donated here tonight goes towards that $10,000 goal, but I'm going to pass it over to Susan, who's going to talk you through the process a little bit more. And I've actually had the pleasure of working with Susan in other webinars that USL has done. So I'm so happy that you're able to talk to this, and I'm so happy to be here. Go ahead.
Thank you, Maggie. I'm going to put in the chat box a link to the online contribution card. If we were in person, we would hand you a paper copy, but this year we will be doing it online. And if you feel confident, you can go for it. It's a couple pages, so I will screen share and do a model one if anyone wants to see an example. So I'm going to go ahead and share that. So this is the form that you should have received a link to. The first page is contact information, so it should be pretty easy, streamlined to get through. The second page gives you the option to split your contribution if you would like. So you can split it 4 ways between all 3 of the organizers you heard from today and For the People operations. You could split it 3 ways between the organizers, or pick 2 to split your donation 50-50. You can also get a little fancy if you want and give one organizer 75 and 125, or 166% and 133%. You are also welcome to say that you don't want to do any math and that I can call you instead to talk to you about how to split your contribution. And if you just completely skip this section, we will assume that your contribution is going to For the People operations, since it's FTP's annual event and not an organizer's event. So that's probably the most complicated part. So feel free to just ask us to call you if you don't want to do the math yourself. Scrolling down, you can let us know if you would like to make a one-time contribution, or as Maggie just said, the monthly contributions, even smaller monthly ones, do really help our organizers kind of plan and budget so that they can focus on their projects. So we really appreciate those. And if you chose one time, you can scroll to the bottom and click next. But if you chose monthly, you can fill out all this information about how much you would like to contribute monthly. If you already are an existing monthly contributor, please do let us know whether you are trying to add to your current contribution or replace it with a new amount. And so if you are adding or updating your existing contribution, you can click next and submit on the last page, and we will do that for you in our database. But if you want to replace your existing contribution, you'll get a link to our website at the end of the form, and we will take down your old one as you set up your new one. So this is the second page, mostly about how to split your contribution, and then information for monthly contributors. Lastly, the one-time contribution page, you can let us know how much you would like to give and whether you would like to mail a check or contribute by bank withdrawal or credit card. And again, the link will be provided after you submit the contribution card. So when you submit it, you should see a link to our website, and you can also see our address. And I will go ahead and stop sharing at this point. And I think we'll just give folks some time to fill that out, and we'll all hang around in case anyone has specific questions.
And if anyone is looking for that card, I did put the link to that form again a second time into the chat. So feel free to go ahead and click on it now. I do believe, lastly, we have about 5 or 6 minutes while people are gonna, maybe 5 minutes while people are filling this out. I do believe we have a little bit of time for some Q&A. And very candidly, I'm trying to remember, Susan, if you were gonna help manage that, but would love to invite folks to actually, if you had some questions that you would love to ask Derek or Zarn or Antonio and hear more or something like that, feel free to actually put your questions
Yeah.
into the chat, and maybe Susan, I'll let you say a little more.
Yeah, definitely. If folks finish the contribution form while we're giving other folks time, you can write a question in the chat for any of the organizers. I see some questions coming in about the contribution form, so I will address those. So if you want to give 1/4 to each of the operations and the 3 projects, you can just give 25% to every single item in that how to split my contribution.
And Susan, and Dante, just a question. Are we soliciting questions about the donation contribution card, or are we also soliciting questions about the triple pandemics and the speakers?
I think any questions folks have, we'd be happy to take.
All right, thanks.
Susan, it looks like Catherine had a question regarding the contribution.
Yeah, I'm writing her back. Thanks, Arna.
Okay.
I can also tell from those of you I can see that people are squinting at their computers and filling out forms, which is of course what we want you to be doing. But for those of you who are not squinting, if you do have questions for Zarna, Antonio, and Derek, feel free to put them in. And we'll get to some of them before we wrap it up.
Is it okay if I add just a point while everyone's doing that?
Yeah, go for it.
So while you were in your breakouts, hopefully you had note takers. Please do send those notes to me because I'm going to put them all in a document, and that document is going to be sent to everyone so that everyone gets the benefit of our collective wisdom. And you can send those notes to me at zana@forthepeople.earth. I'm putting it in the chat, zana@forthepeople.earth. That's where you can send your notes, and I will compile them all into a single document, and that will be sent to everyone.
There's a few questions coming in the chat that I've been asked to just kind of say for everyone to understand. However you say you want to split your contribution on the form, you give the amount you want on the website, and then we'll split the contribution for you. You don't have to take care of that yourself. That's why we're gathering that data, so we can do that work for you.
Brilliant. And as people continue to fill things out, and I know if there aren't any questions, that's absolutely fine. But I did want to make one last plug that this is a community that Zarna, Antonio, Derek, and others are people that you can reach out to and converse with. And I want to, with that, encourage all of us to continue to connect with each other. So if you would like to, feel free to follow up with a conversation or keep the conversation going via email or otherwise.
Would it be okay to add one more point about contribution?
Please.
Yeah, if you have land available or any space in Portland or even in Seattle, contact us. Land back, FTP.
And we have the first question in the chat to any organizer who wants to answer it, which is, do the 3 of you ever work together, or do you all work on separate projects? So Derek, Zarna, and Antonio, whoever would like to answer.
I guess I'll go. Yeah, we have actually all worked together on multiple projects. You know, in FTP and before FTP. So we've actually known each other for years and have been doing this work together. We've worked together on Shell No, we've worked together on Break Free, we've worked together on certain racial justice projects. We've worked together on educating people on climate justice and food justice. So yeah, the 3 of us have you know, worked on the same projects at different times in different combinations. and and actually, like so many of the people in FTP, it's the same. Like we've all worked in many different ways together on various projects, and we also have separate projects, where we're focusing on a certain thing, and the others might not be part of it, but we are supporting each other through that.
Maybe Derek or Antonio can feel free to add to that, but there's another question about, could someone define just transition, which again, any organizer could answer.
I can go. So there's a couple different definitions of the just transition. One is based in the labor movement, which is focused on that fossil fuel workers should be given the opportunity to be trained and be able to transition away from fossil fuel jobs and not just be left to be losing their jobs. And so often without a just transition, the corporate interests will profit and leave their workers behind. More broadly speaking, the Climate Justice Alliance and Movement Generation have put forward the Just Transition Framework, which is widely accepted in climate justice circles as the standard for how we move through the climate crisis, which is basically how do we transition from an extractive economy that's about digging, burning, and dumping and about enclosing wealth to a living economy, a regenerative economy that is rooted in caring and sacredness and cooperation and sharing. And there's a link to the Climate Justice Alliance site that Alora sent. Thanks for that. And I would just add that there's like a zine that's 8 pages. That's a good introduction. There's the framework itself, which is this like map looking graphic, which is really useful. But there's actually an 80-page document or something like that that you can download, and it gets way into it if you want to really geek out on it. And while I have the mic, just quickly want to say that there was a question from Annette about the community care debt relief. And if anyone was already wanting to contribute to that, to just get in touch with Susan and I, and we can set that up already. It's just wasn't on the card because it hasn't officially launched yet. But we'll be announcing that through the emails in a couple of weeks, and there'll be that event in November as well. But it's already set up in our backend. We just would need to talk with you privately.
Brilliant. I'm looking up at the time and I'm quite impressed. Here we are. We've actually arrived at the half of the hour. I want to say a big thank you to everyone. I really appreciate all the speakers, for everyone who's been able to jump on, all the family, friends, fellow organizers, colleagues. It's been an incredible time to be able to connect for this brief moment. Please feel free, as we mentioned, to follow up with us. If you filled out a card or other thing like that, expect possibly an email from Susan. As Derek alluded to, we'll also follow up with some of the notes that Zarna is also gathering. Is there anything else that folks from the FTP team would like to say? Otherwise, a really big thank you. And then if we can, we'd love to just turn off our mutes at the end and just all say goodbye to each other. But otherwise, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. It's been great to be here with you. Thank you.
So well done. Thank you.
All right.
Glad I was here.
Thanks.
Yes.
Excellent work. I appreciate it all.
Good presentation.
Thanks, everyone.
We really appreciate
you all so much.
share space.
Good job.
Merp, merp.
Great
Really
job.
fun.
Merp, merp.
Merp, merp. Merp, merp.
Thank you for all.
Bye all.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.